large part of what made me set up this channel in the first place was to help smooth the ground between denouncers, the hardcore atheists that refuse to believe anything religious, and the fundamentalists, those who accept the Bible and only the Bible, often at face value. A task about as rewarding as Blackadder might put it, standing on top of a stepladder between two aggressive armed forces, chain-smoking cigars through a luminous balaclava. Even behind a camera is hard work, and I'm guaranteed to get a heck of a criticism from both sides. But I can't put this off any longer. It's high time I raised the issues with the two sides of the argument. The old rivalry between the discoveries of science and the teachings of the Church is a story that goes back to the Middle Ages. Old views being washed away by new discoveries about how the world works, what makes it up, and where it comes from. It gets to the point where the Church seems backwards and obsolete, while science can appear radical, arrogant, and impersonal. Many authors, particularly Tolkien, have noted what happens when science and progress get carried away with itself. With the majority of people relying on the scientific method and the amazing things we can learn from it, more people seem to be turning away from the Church and losing faith in God. This really isn't necessary. There isn't any reason why a religious world can't have a scientific outlook, or vice versa for that matter. I'm going to prove this to you. I'm going to break down the issues that plague this topic and explain to you how we can achieve this. How we can achieve a scientifically objective world, and yet one that can still allow room for God. But there really isn't any need for that sort of compromise. Both science and religion have a single word that the blindly antagonistic amongst them use to back up or plug arguments. Religion has faith, complete trust or confidence in something or someone. Science has fact, a thing that is known or proven to be true. Whilst not mutually exclusive, both are used to near abandonment by each side. The thing is though, neither of them are constant. Faith has been known to be iron hard and inflexible, and yet sometimes so flexible you can use them as a tie. Many people gain or lose faith throughout their life, exchanging one point of view for another as the situation demands. Facts are constantly changing as well. A famous story about Einstein, when he was teaching at Oxford, is well for bearing in mind. It was said he once set the students in his physics class the exact same exam, with the exact same questions, the exact same class, 2 years in a row. This seems like cheating by an examiner. But when his assistant asked him how he could do this by giving the same students the same questions 2 years running, he replied, "The answers have changed." This is important. In medical studies, students are warned that half of what they are going to be taught might well be proven wrong in the next 10 years. Jo Brand, when she was on QI some years ago, said when she was a medical student, she was told there's no such thing as a fact. On the subject of QI, that great quiz show, that's hard to pronounce, they made a habit and they're using the half-life of facts to trick their guests and confuse them. Many people have fallen over the question, how many moons does the Earth have? Many people think 1. Originally they said 3 or 4. There are 1,000,000. Now it's believed there is no moon. It's believed to be another planet. We might be in a binary system. So, facts are unstable, and they change all the time. Using blunt words that cover a broad basis gets people nowhere. I've heard it said that facts can cause people to lose their faith in God. But I think it's the version of facts that cause people to lose faith, and not just in God, in general. In the education system, an older, easier explanation is easier to build up a knowledge base of the concepts for revealing the actual information that we know. When learning about physics and electricity, we aren't told about the different charge states of the materials, or the chemical reaction that leads to the exchange of ions that create the electric current when we were in primary school, for example. No. We get given the distressed hamster explanation. The idea that inside every battery there's a little hamster going round a wheel, and that wheel's like a mill wheel, and that pushes the electrons back, causing the positive charge. But in actual fact, it's the other way around. With this changing knowledge base, we can lose faith in all manner of things, not just God. With things changing all the time, we can lose faith in authority figures. And the reason why I personally think we all go through a period of doubt in our mid-teens, a time where everything's changing. The last thing we need is for our knowledge base to be shifting. Many say that religion is backwards, and constantly giving us outdated ideas from an ancient book. But, interestingly enough, many scientific discoveries, when looked at through the lens of the Bible, are strange enough mid confirming what the book puts forward, and has been putting forward for over 2,000 years. If we go right back to the very beginning, and I mean all the way back, the first thing, the universe is nothing. Well, there might have been something there, but even science doesn't know what it was. And then, the Big Bang. According to the Bible, the first thing in the universe was light. The Big Bang was bound to cause a huge amount of energy, and that energy could have taken all manner of forms, including light. Next, the separation of heaven and earth. Gravity, drawing particles together into increasingly larger masses until eventually you have a definitive down, as it were. And that separates up from down, the heavens from the ground. And that's just in the very early chapters of Genesis 1. There are many, many more details that we can go into with that. The tale of the flood is indeed another one we can go into, because sea levels have risen and fallen over the millennia, and there is even evidence of centuries of rainfall from times of early humankind. And every single culture on Earth has told stories about how there was a flood that covered at least their portion of the Earth, even the earliest days or sometime a bit later on. It's also worthwhile mentioning that every major character, from Exodus onwards, has historical evidence to prove they existed. Jesus was proven to exist, and some details might not be precise in the Old Testament, but enough there is there to knock back the argument of it not being true. As for suggestions that the views in the Bible are backwards, it's worthwhile mentioning that the Bible has said things nearly 2,000 years ago that scientists have only recently begun to discover. And by recent I mean the past 100 years or so. I remember when I was in Brisbane, the pastor said that scientists had discovered that feelings of sadness, fear, and worry have an actual effect, not just on mental health, but physical health. The term worried sick is literal. The Bible has been saying that for years. It's been saying that worrying never helps. It can only make things worse. God is also saying trust in God, and if you're not sure about that, that isn't easy. But neither is finding ways of coping with all that worry. You need to let it off somehow. The Bible's been willing to help for years. And it has been showing us there are many things in this world we just can't understand. People often say science disproves the teaching of the church, and that if we keep following God, we will fall back and never advance. Quite a few religious people say that science will drive us to the edge of extinction and cause more damage to this world than we can ever imagine. Looking at where we are today, with the Industrial Revolution causing all manner of damage to the atmosphere and so on, we can see their point. The thing is, though, both religion and science can be used to the same ends, as well as turning on each other. The way I like to describe it is they're like currents of electricity that can exist in separate wires or same wires. In separate wires, they can affect each other through magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields. I'll show my brother that's actually the case, but since there's so much insulation around the wires, it makes sense that stuff like that can happen. But in this case, these are powerful enough forces going through the wires that sooner or later they're going to mess each other up. But if they run the same direction, they can contribute to a great force in different ways, be it constructive or destructive. On the destructive side, science builds great and terrifying instruments of destruction, and religion tells us that it's right to use them on a particular group of people. Yeah, that one over there, yeah, one that's not like us. On the other hand, on the constructive side, science allows us to produce more food, better medicine, and increase our understanding of the universe, whilst religion builds on us as a people and gives us the heart and reason to continue with the good deeds. If they run in opposite directions, however, they will cause problems for each other, hold-ups, interference, and loss of focus. They will waste time arguing amongst themselves, rather than doing the jobs that they need to do. If they're in the same wire and going in the same direction, this can double the force acting in the world. Again, be it constructive or destructive, the same reasons. But if they're in the same wire and you put them against each other, one going one way, one going the other, then, as any physicist will tell you, they will cancel out. It is unusual. Certainly science can cancel out religion at times. But can science be cancelled out by religion in turn? In every way we think of science, it can be cancelled out by religious teachings. If we take science as just a collective term for the studies of physics, chemistry, biology, and psychology, it goes thus. Biology and psychology can be affected by having faith. That is scientifically known as the placebo effect. The moment science comes up with a term for it, you know full well that's what they're talking about. And they mean it. It's a serious thing. This actually results in necessitating blind trials to prove the efficacy of the treatment or just a cure. Furthermore, the Bible depicts miracles that confuse our understanding of physics and chemistry. Since a large part of biology and psychology rely on our understanding of physics and chemistry, how physics around an atom can affect the chemistry of the body and therefore how the mind works. The studies of science don't carry much weight to push against religion, and therefore can't push it out the window. If we take science as a general term for proving a hypothesis through testing, then we hit another problem with faith. Because having faith skews the results. It's also written in the Bible, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. And as I said in one of my earliest videos, it's not possible to prove God exists, but proof denies faith. And without faith, God is nothing. So we can't test God, and we can't prove God without having faith, which, as we all know, will skew the test, making it biased, or at the very least ineffective. So science doesn't disprove God. In some cases, it actually confirms he's around. Worth remembering that. Also, what I said about science coming up with a term for it. A friend of mine, he's not religious at all, he mentioned synchronicity to me. Essentially, what we expect or what we have a feeling for, that somehow comes true. The example he gave was that he's always wanted to be a curator at a museum. He was talking to us on the phone a while ago, and then one day his flatmate, she didn't know anything about it, she didn't know he'd been talking to his mum on the phone about it. She showed him a leaflet for a seminar at the university, that's at UTAS, and it was given by a curator of one of London's museums, don't remember which one. He went along, had a chat with the chap afterwards, said he wanted to be a curator. He now has the chap's email, so when he finishes his studies, he knows where to go. Synchronicity, he calls it. Possibly just God showing off. I don't try and dissuade him otherwise. But if science comes up with a term like that, it's simply their way of saying, okay, he sees this happening, we don't know what it is, we're going to give it a fancy name and claim it's ours. That is technically human arrogance. But, when someone puts a name on something, it makes it more official than ever. Even if religion has known about it for a very long time beforehand. To some, the idea is something that's hard to identify and explain in other ways than the standard dogma is not a pleasant one, and isn't something they want in their lives. Faith is one of those loose terms and something many hardcore scientific believers deny having in any form. However, and I'm definitely going to cover this in a later video, the lack of faith in anything can result in a mistrust of others or even themselves. We all have something we have faith in, not necessarily a theistic religious sense, but at least faith in what we believe in, which is often based on information others have found. But we ourselves haven't independently tested or verified. This is very important, because if you haven't independently verified it yourself, then you are relying blindly on people to have done their homework and done it well. Someone once went out of their way to do an in-depth mathematical calculation to prove that 1 + 1 is 2. Seems ridiculous, we've known that all along, but he went out of his way to do it. Otherwise, all of mathematics would collapse around us. He was truly scientific. I have heard that studies have shown that Christians are more likely to be happy than atheists, but I didn't pay much attention to that. But faith is a loose, intangible term that we need. Other intangible things that we can't put our finger on but help keep us going are around us. Love is one that musicians and poets have been trying to pin down since time immemorial. Humour is another that can't be explained without robbing it of power. Explaining a joke kills it. And without something to make us laugh, we lose interest. Another thing worthwhile considering: we humans only have so much room in our heads to understand so many things. It's impossible to have all the knowledge in the world in your head, and yet still function. I know it sounds vaguely like I'm saying that because Stephen Hawking had such a big brain, that resulted in him having motor neuron disease. It's an interesting thought, but not one I'm going to be pushing. But that's because of that, Stephen Hawking was able to open his mind and fully understand everything around him. He's a remarkable man, I'm going to deny that. But if I was to raise one thing that I don't understand, it will be time travel by superluminal speed. I mean, I can understand string theory. I can understand thermodynamics to an extent. I can't understand how we can essentially go faster than light and go back in time, essentially bringing light back to where it came from. It's a mad idea, and it boggles the mind. Certainly in my case. I said a couple of weeks ago that just because something boggles the mind doesn't mean it's not true. You can sort of see where I'm going with this. Just because you can't understand something does not mean it's not true. Just because I can't understand how we can basically have light reach us and then race back to the point where it started and get there before it left, then that doesn't mean it's not possible. I may be oversimplifying it drastically, but that is basically how I see the concept of superluminal time travel. Rather ridiculous and it makes limited sense to me. Ultimately, though, because we have so little room in our heads for every little bit of knowledge in the world, that's why we have books. That's why we put things down data chips, write things down on paper. That's why we started writing things down. But this brings me to an interesting final thought, raised by comedian Ricky Gervais. What if we hit a Great Library of Alexandria problem? What if all of human history, scientific discovery, religious texts, and everything, all of our creations, is wiped out, and we are sent right back to the Stone Age? What happens? He says science will rewrite the same books in the same way as they were before, whilst religion will end up writing a new and completely different book. This isn't entirely a stupid idea. It has some flaws in it, I'll be honest. First of all, as with some arguments that many people just throw up out of the blue, it fails to note the fact that if we were suddenly thrust back into the Stone Age, only a select few people would survive, and those are those that actually know what they're doing. Whereas the rest of us will most likely die of malnutrition or most likely get eaten by a cave bear. But assuming enough has survived to not only live on and procreate, but also start to rewrite history, I think his idea misses a fundamental part about knowing God and about humanity. They are on a general scale the same. We can look at someone and say, yeah, they're human. But on an individual level, they are drastically different. And that will change everything. We may say we repeat history over and over again in politics and films. But if we take the films as an example, the players are different. You can have the same script for a play, but odds are you will never have the same actors twice. We can have a word-for-word perfect version of Hamlet, written by the bard himself, and yet we will never have the original Hamlet. We will never have all the original characters from the Scottish play. We will never have the man the part for Othello was written for. And that means that even if we have it perfectly written, it will never be the same. And that will be the case regardless of what we're writing. Yes, religious books will be different. Odds are they will write down completely different things, but they will cover the same general subjects. The creation of the world. If God starts to reveal himself, you may well tell them what happened in the past. Perhaps the original tale of how the world was created would carry on, assuming the oral traditions continue. Sooner or later, they'll write that down. They'll become canonized. How new events build up, how history turns out, they write that down. And how those parables, or how those fables, will help influence people in the future. Similar things, unless the culture is drastically different, the reasoning and the writings will be more or less the same on a broad scale. Science, on the other hand, will make the same discoveries, but again, the players will be different. Yes, sooner or later someone will work out gravity and how that works. But will they call it gravity? Unlikely. And I can tell you something. Unless they have memories like elephants over the generations, it will never be Newtonian physics. It will be something else. It will be Jordanian physics. It won't be Nicholas Flamel that is famous for alchemy. It will be Boris Johnson, maybe. Good lord, it's a terrifying thought. But that's the thing. On a general scale, yes, it'll be the same. On an individual level, they'll be completely different. Religion will make similar strides, mark out similar ideas to ones that have come before. But since most religious texts will be historical, it will not have the same characters, the same deeds, and the same feats. Medieval science. Neither of them will be the same, but they will retain a hint of what was discovered before. And sooner or later, they'll start to correlate. Ultimately, whilst I am trying to smooth this path, the debate has gone on for more than 500 years, and I seriously doubt it's going to stop anytime soon. Just because one warrior pilgrim decides, I'm going to tell you what it's like. That's not going to change everyone's minds overnight. No. There are nowhere near enough Scrooges in the world for that. Just some of the arguments are worthwhile looking at again, with different eyes, and taken with the right pinch of salt. Just because we understand the universe more doesn't mean God can't exist in it. As one man rightly said, just because we can understand a motor car, an internal combustion engine, doesn't mean Henry Ford didn't make it. Just because we understand alternating current doesn't mean we can disprove Nikola Tesla. Just because we know what the world is like now doesn't mean God isn't a part of it. Many of these arguments may need a bit of context, and that is what we'll be covering next week. Context of the Bible and how important that can be in our studies. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, then click subscribe and click the notification bell as well, and that will make sure you get updates for when the next video lands, hopefully next week. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and by all means share it with people you think will be interested, especially if they are one of those people that are a bit confused by Ricky Gervais's idea. Like I said, we all have big brains, but not everyone can fit them all in. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave them down in the comments, as well as any scriptures you might think I need to take a look at, or indeed any comments in general about this video. I'm aware I might get a heck of a lot of abuse for this, but I'm pretty sure I'll get a lot of abuse over the next few months. So please, leave your thoughts in the comments, be as civil as you can please. Until the next video, stay safe, keep your hands clean, and God be with you.